Switzerland, and it's a great honor to have with us Mr. Yo-Yo Ma, the renowned cellist and United Nations Messenger of Peace. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. There's nothing more important than doing this right now.
In fact, and you, in your career, you've always connected with people. You've used your music to really build the trust and understanding and further the goals of the UN. Can you tell us more about how do you use the power of music to connect us and to build that trust?
Well, I think, first of all, music is very simple because it's a convener. It always brings people together. And that is its first and most important power, because once people come together, and usually it puts people in the same state of mind. And so you have you're working then with a communal aspect of society, which is fantastic, because when that happens, we then have the opportunity to really have dialogue. And then people in the same state of mind, you're listening to something that you can actually share, and it turns the music, either it's your music or some other music, but it turns that into ours. And that's the power of culture, of science, of arts and culture. It's once you know it, you receive it, you own it. And once you own it, you have a common ground that is not necessarily what you're fighting over, but something else that gives you perspective.
And you've recently launched a specific project to bring that power of music around the world, the BUF Project. I think you're set out to perform all 6 suites for solo cello in 36 locations.
Yes, so not quite as ambitious as the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but nevertheless, what I found out, we've done 26 of them already, and what I've been working mostly to do 2 things. I play the music that I love and that I do best. So it's not saying this is the best music, but this is what I do. And I bring it to community, and it could be, on the border of 2 countries that don't get along. It could be in communities that have been devastated by various disasters of either nature or human causes, and basically, I invite people to sit down and to talk. And for me, it's an experiment. It's a listening tour. I'm listening to what people have to tell me, and the only question I ask them is, what do you care about? What are they working for? And I can report happily that whether it's in Beirut or in Jakarta, or the North-South Korea border, or Mexico, Texas, every place has incredibly strong leaders that are trying to make their community stronger and more resilient. But the question is, what can all of them do together that they can't do alone? And that's I'm listening for their answers, and at the end of the 2 years, I'll know a lot more, so that I can actually try and take these goals, which are both local but global goals, planetary goals, and to look for the arc between the hyperlocal and the global abstract that many people all want to participate in, but they're asking why. And if that arc is formed and is unbroken, we will get there. If it gets broken or split up by anything, we lose the power and the energy of what's happening at the local level.
So it's a journey you're on to really connect the local to the global. And you're, of course, also a UN messenger of peace. So you have committed to advancing the goals of the UN, and the UN's mission for peace. How do you do that in your work?
Well, I've been working with the UN, like, for example, in Jakarta, UN Women. We did, there's a wonderful young global shaper, Danica Flesch, who worked at the World Bank but then decided she wanted to found a company with women that just are doing batik and in faraway islands and not able to support themselves. So she created a business where the women, actually the communities, are the majority owners. And what does that mean is that she then, makes sure that the market is there, the wages are there, and actually the communities then can prosper. They brought it down to Jakarta, flew for the first time. UN women came, and but what happened is this: in the course of talking, great news. 1 in 3 women in Indonesia apparently suffer from domestic violence. Now, there's also great incidence of bullying. Now, I'm thinking of, if a child sees domestic violence, what is the likelihood that they will either be subject to bullying or be the bullies themselves? So here you take two somewhat unrelated issues, but you put them together, and this is why I think it's so important to have each individual goal, but I think it's important to look at each goal, look at the planet through the lens of each goal, and see how they connect to all the other goals. So it's great that there are people that say, this is my favorite, I like number 5, I like number 17. They're all great, but every time I've been in a group of people talking about women or oceans or poverty, you see that, the subject, you can get very deep in the subject, but you don't solve the problem by just identifying the problem because it actually ends up connecting. And I'm interested as a musician to be able to try and put people together that interconnect. So, for example, pollution in the river in Jakarta, bringing just all the multi-stakeholders that actually use the river, whether that's there or in Christchurch, with the Maoris, in New Zealand. It's about bringing those communities together. That's, I guess, goal number, is it 17?
Yes.
Yeah, right, collaboration. And so I think my approach is to actually look at that arc, find what's not connecting. And so lots of people are connecting things, but my job, both in music as well as doing this work, is to say, what's missing? Yeah. Because there's always something missing. I'm always missing something in performance and say, okay, everything's fine, but that one thing is going to make it or ruin it if I don't pay attention. And I think that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and your work has really touched so many of the goals, and they are all interconnected. And as you know, we only have 10 years left to achieve them. So the Secretary General has called for a decade of action, of ambitious action by everyone, businesses, individuals, governments. How can we engage young people, especially youth?
That's, for me, that's probably the most powerful force that we have on our planet. I think the Gen Zs, I think 34% of the world's population is Gen Z. Now, what do we know about Gen Zs? They want the truth. They want to, as consumers, they want to buy things from places that they can trust. So that's good for starters. They don't trust huge organizations because these organizations need to earn the trust of these young people. So it doesn't come as a given, and so we all have to earn it. That's not bad, because they're also poised to be one of the greatest, there's going to be a huge transfer of wealth. So there's economic power, they have energy. We don't want to put all the burden on them, but so I suggest that all of us who are older, and I'm certainly one of them, actually work and listen and talk to the young generation and give them the tools and skills necessary to accelerate that process, because combined that energy is going to, it's their world anyway. Let's give it to them sooner rather than later.
And maybe just a last word on the power of music and culture in speaking to our shared humanity and forging a connected world in these divisive times.
I'll give you one example. I've been reading up on apartheid and Mandela. In the 1980s, Mandela's name was not really known, which is kind of incredible because everybody knows who Mandela is. And it's a huge series of musicians, from Harry Belafonte, to you name it. And that over decades, and the young people started the investment divestiture in South Africa, but the music drove so much of the awareness that actually it became impossible not for something to happen. And I think over and over again in the civil rights movement, that's, in terms of, we're talking about equality, there was an inequality there that was crying out for people to think about. And I think youth and music have a huge part to do with it, because when you're young, you're discovering the world for the first time. And so you're therefore more open, and if you have access, then you know what equality could mean, or equality is access, right? So I think music has a huge part to play. I play in a lot of what I do is to actually, again, to look for the places where music might be needed that we don't. The spaces where, for example, bereavement, parents whose children are shot. That's one of the worst things that could happen to any human being, is you're alive and your progeny is gone. And finding a way for them to place that grief both in music, in community, and to honor their child in some way allows for them to pick up their lives again. So I think there are all kinds of things,
so many.
But I think you have to find the crevices where things are not completely joined together.
Yeah. So the power of music. Yo-Yo Ma, thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.